Welcome back, everybody, for more Factorio C-Block. This is episode number 36, and today, in this episode, we are going to forever solve our power problems. In fact, we're probably going to go just a little bit overboard, and we're going to have way more power than we ever need because we are going nuclear. We're going to start sorting for uranium ore. Okay, Zisteau, that's great. How did you get that uranium ore? Well, I'll tell you. Let's go a little bit of a review, I guess because it's been a while since we've gone through this process all the way from the start. You get the seafloor pump and you pump up the viscous mud water. You wash the viscous mud water, you get the heavy mud water, you wash that heavy mud water, you get some nodules, the kind of crusty remains of what was left on the seafloor. You hit that up with some sulfuric acid and you get some slag slurry. You hit that slag slurry up with a coal filter and you get mineral sludge. You send that mineral sludge down here to the crystallizer, and you crystallize up some bobmonium ore, some crotinium ore, and some sapphirite ore. It's fantastic. You put that stuff on some belts, you send that down a little bit farther, and you crush it up really nicely. You take that crushed stuff, and you put it through this flotation cell, and you end up with some chunks. You take your crotinium, bobmonium, and sapphirite chunks, and you send them to this leaching plant, and you leach out some nice bobmonium, crotinium, and sapphirite crystals with the addition of, with the help of some different acids, some sulfuric acid. This is hydrochloric acid, and this one takes sulfuric acid as well. You take all those chunks, and then you also have to make some of these, what are they called? Catalyst frames or something like that? No, mineral catalyst. Yeah, you need some catalyst. You send those crystals down here to the ore sorting facility, and then we just need some belts, and we will have uranium in just a moment. I did a little bit of belt weaving since last episode so that we could have all of these different, the 3 different types of colors that we need all available. I think it needs to be like that. All available to each side. We're going to use 6 of these ore sorting guys. And I was taking a look at the way that the nuclear works in the C-Block, in the modded stuff, and it's kind of similar, but a little bit different, and I'm wondering if it's a little bit OP, and we'll get to why that is in just a minute. So now we're sorting from that, we're getting uranium ore. Okay, lovely, now this stuff is getting down the line. Yeah, okay, so that's a lot of uranium. In the vanilla version of the game, you just have to go find this out in the world, an ore patch, and mine it up. It does take a little bit of acid. But basically, now we're back to vanilla. All this stuff here, this is what the modded adds, all these steps. Alright, so now that we're sorting for the uranium, the next step is to process it into the bright green and the dark green, the 235 and the 238. The dark green is super common, and the bright green is super uncommon. So we're going to use filter inserters to separate them so that nothing gets crammed up or jammed up. There we go. Okay, so that's processing. We're producing about 1 per second, and I just did some rough mental math to make sure we had enough of these to kind of support that. And we are definitely in the overkill part of the spectrum here. So I'm not going to be too finicky about this. When I did the nuclear stuff in the Factorio Recursion series, I made a very refined setup that wouldn't shut down, that only used belts with like belt loops and priority loaders and kind of complicated stuff that took a lot of thought. And for this series, this nuclear stuff is not really the focus. We're worried about algae and making rockets out of algae, so we're going to brute force it just a bit and then move on to something else. So what I'm going to do, we're going to put all of this dark green stuff in a massive passive provider warehouse. Although I don't think I want it just running forever like that, so let's, for now, we can restrict it to like a normal size chest. And later on, we can expand it if we want. And then for the bright green stuff on the right side of the belt, we will be making just normal passive provider chests. We're not going to get that nearly as often, obviously. 1% versus 99%. So let's just say, I don't know, whatever, give me that much. Doesn't really matter that much. You guys, have you stopped making? You're not getting bobmonium. Okay, let's see what's going on here. I screwed something up somewhere. Alright, so had to go fix a small problem over to the left, but now stuff is being produced. We're sorting for the uranium. It's being centrifuged into the bright green and the dark green. We got the dark green starting to stack up. And the bright green, we don't quite have any yet, but that will get there eventually. Next step is to make some fuel cells and to dump those into some reactors and start generating power so we can get these used up uranium fuel cells so we can start generating plutonium, which is going to be our sort of positive loop to make this worthwhile. Unlike in vanilla, where you do Covarex to get the bright green in the modded, we're going to process this stuff to get orange, and then the orange will turn into more orange. Dark green and orange, not bright green and orange. So we're going to do our layout for the reactors over here in this space, and we're going to try to tile it from the left to the right, so when we need more, we can just add more, that kind of thing. If we need more uranium, we'll go back to the left and we'll add speed modules, and I don't think we can actually add productivity modules to any step there for the uranium. But we're going to do a double row of these reactors. Maybe we'll start with, I don't know, 12 or something? I'm not sure. Haven't decided that yet. Each of these guys generates 40 megawatts, just like vanilla, and they get an adjacency bonus for each reactor next to them. So I guess they insulate each other, so their heat is a bit more efficiently generated or whatever. So if this guy here has 3 neighbors, he's going to generate 40, an additional 40, 40, 40. So this guy is going to generate 160 megawatts. So each of these guys will generate that much, except for the ones on the end, because they only have 2 neighbors directly adjacent to each other. It's going to be a lot of power. We're going to need some inserters to put in the fuel cells and take out the spent fuel cells. So we're going to need as well. We're going to need belts bringing fuel cells and then returning the spent ones over to the left to be reprocessed and stuff. And then we'll also need the heat pipes, another object thing we're going to have to organize in the layout. Those have to go. So we're going to need underground belts. Well, that was kind of sloppy. Those have to go to these guys, the heat exchangers, which are super advanced boilers, basically. And we will need some water. That's not water. We'll need some water here and there. Don't step in the water. I almost killed myself. We need some water to do that, and then we'll be generating steam and sending that boop, boop, boop to the steam turbine. Okay, so layout development step 1. Figure out how much space you've got and how much things you need. So we are going to use the width of the substations, and within that width, I realized that we could fit exactly 12 of these guys, a double row of 6. Then we've got 3 of these substation kind of heights. We've got 3 of those available. Well, minus a little bit because these guys are encroaching just a little bit. So we've got a decent amount of space, and we have to figure out how many things we need. We also need to figure out how to route the belts and stuff. So what we're going to do, something I've done before in the recursion series, we're going to put the fuel cells on one half of the belt, and the spent ones will get outputted to the same belt on the other half. And you can actually do this just to test. So this is going to go on the outside of the belt, and it is going to, we're going to loop it at the end. Where are my blue belts? I know I have more. Oh my gosh, too many things in my inventory. So we're going to loop it like that. I guess it will need this guy. And so you can see that this guy is going to the top side of the belt. So the inside, so the top here, and then the bottom here, that's going to be where the normal fuel cells are, and we can just test that that works for these inserters on this side as well. So these guys should output to the top if this is going to work properly. And they are. Okay, good, fantastic. So we'll be outputting the spent ones to the top of the belt, and that'll get sent back over here to the left to get reprocessed into plutonium and all kinds of stuff. So that takes care of that. We've got our inserters, we've got our belt, and we've got this guy, which we can just sort of, we can go left to right like that. We can pick up the extras. And we need to figure out how much we need of the boilers, how many we need of the steam turbines. And do that, you figure out some basic math. So we establish each of these guys is going to be generating 160 megawatts, except for the 2 on the very end, which we're just going to ignore. We're going to pretend like those are operating to full strength, because as we tile this over to the right, the ones that we tile will connect, and only the ones on the very ends won't be at that value. So I'm just going to ignore that. We're going to assume they're all 160. So if you multiply 160 times 6, so we figure out what we need for each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You get 960. 960 megawatts for this unit of one substation section wide. And then you look at the little number here. It says 22 megawatts energy consumption. So we take 960 with the calculator, divide by 22. We get 44. Here's my little shorthand. We need 44 of these heat exchangers. And then you take that same number, 960, and you divide by 15, the maximum power output of a steam turbine Mark III, and you get 64. So here's my shorthand, just to remember, 64, okay? So we need 44 of these guys and 64 of these guys within this amount of space. It might not fit. It's possible it's not going to fit, in which case we might have to fill this space in to get a little bit extra space. But that's where we start. And we also have to account for the fact that these guys need pipes. And then we will also need little bits, don't kill yourself here stepping in the water. We will also need to provide water to these guys. The vanilla ones, you can run, I don't know, I forget exactly. It's about 10 or 11 of these guys per one pump. But those were Mark 1 heat exchangers in vanilla. This is Mark 3. I don't know if that means it must mean they take more water. So we're just going to try to provide a lot of little water pumps. Oh, did I get stuck? Oh, okay, pick that up. But for now, let's put that away and fill that in. So that's how we start. Now we just have to figure out the best layout to make use of the space. And do we have enough space? Is it going to be possible, or do we need to fill in the land? All right, so here's draft number 1 of a full layout. And if we use our little blueprint guy to count up the machines that we've tried to fit in the space provided, it says I've managed to fit 41 of these heat exchangers. We need 44, so we're almost there. But it says we only got 49 of the steam turbines, and we need 64, so we're shy 15. I really don't think we're going to be able to fit 15 into here, and I'm already over the edge here, because as we mirror this upwards, we're going to be running into this stuff. So I think what I need to do is I need to grab some landfill. We need to fill this in, probably even shift this salination plant down a little bit, so that we have an extra substation square worth of space. And we're close enough that I think with that amount of extra space, we can definitely do it. Well, after trying to fit all of that into 4 of these squares, turns out that's not going to fit either. Just the steam turbines and the heat exchangers, they take up almost entirely 2 squares by themselves. So we're going to do something slightly different, slightly less optimal, but still it's going to be wildly more power than we need. Instead of having these 12 in an unbroken line because we need these substations here, which I took out of the way just to fiddle with things, we are going to have 2 fewer, and there's going to be a gap, which means the ones on either end are only going to have 2 neighbors, so 120 megawatts instead of 3 for 160. So we're not going to need as many of these or as many of these, and so the layout should be much more straightforward. Okay, so the layout is all done, and just for dramatic effect, I picked everything up and we're going to place it back down with the robots. 1 blueprint, 1.5 gigawatts per row of our substations Mark III. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those. So that's a lot of power. I don't think we're ever going to need that much for this playthrough, but we definitely have it if we need it. There's all that. Then we've got here, we've got a requester chest for some uranium fuel cells. And then here we will filter out the used up uranium fuel cells, put them in a passive provider chest so we can send them back over to the left to get processed. We can stamp this down to the right. We've even got an extra row here if we want. But I probably won't use that. Okay, so next thing to do is to start making some... Let's see, how do I want this laid out? Maybe like that, so we have room to put an inserter there. I don't want to totally do it with all robots, because that can be pretty inefficient. If we can just do it with inserters from machine to machine, that would be probably better. Okay, so we want like one guy like that. And I want you to pick up from that guy, though. And then this one, I'll use a stack inserter. There we go. Oh, we also need iron. Okay, iron is right there. Where's the nearest spot that is taking iron off the belt? Is it getting taken off down here by the circuits? Oh, you know what? We're on a different network, aren't we? Yeah, we're not on the network. Okay, so we're probably going to have to pull a belt off of there. All right, so just like that, we have some iron split off the main bus, added over here to our assembly machine where we're making uranium fuel cells from the bright green, the dark green, and the iron. And then I added some little charging pads for the robots as they fly over here. They fly down there, pick it up, fly over here to drop it off. It gets added to the belt, and the belt is already backed up. And our temperatures are steadily increasing. Temperature 700 C. That's good. Okay, and what's how much power are we using? We're not using very much power, but we have a lot of these guys now, so I guess they're not actually burning anything off because they don't need to. Maximum temperature 750. Oh, now it's working. Now we're getting steam. Maybe it just got hot enough just now, huh? Do these guys require 750? It doesn't say. Oh, it must have been. They must require 750 because this thing just hit 750 and this thing just came online. So the vanilla ones, the rank ones, they take 500 C. I remember that number. But it doesn't actually say on this one. It does say on this. Max temperature 500. Max temperature 625. Max temperature 750. Yeah, so I guess all of them require a temperature of 750, but it got there. Yeah, okay, so we have power, for sure. We definitely have more than we need. What we really need right now are these things, the used up fuel cells, so that we can start working on plutonium, which will make this go forever. Maybe we should do some research just to make use of our power. This is probably a good idea. That's kind of expensive for more character slots. Worker robot speed, that's even more expensive. Okay, let's do one more of these. That's getting kind of expensive. Let's do it anyway. We are 6 out of 7 on our satellites launched. I'm wondering if we're going to get more stuff listed here, or if we have to research those before they'll show up in our list for the SpaceX progress summary thing. But that's going. Now, let's see. Yes, okay, so the power has peaked. It's jumped up to 1.7. This guy is like 1.5 gigawatts just on his own, plus all of our solar panels. So we definitely have more power than we need now. And as I start running around adding speed modules to everything and beacons and stuff, when we need more power, we can just put down another one of these things. Okay, but we have some used up uranium fuel cells, so we should work on the plutonium. All right, what's it gonna say? 7 out of 7? Do we get more info? Oh yeah, we do. Okay. Dry dock construction progress. Dry dock structure component 0 out of 10. Dry dock assembly component 0 out of 2. All right, anyway, now that all this stuff is up and running, the next step is to request our used up fuel cells, which get dropped off here. Send them back over here to the left and back into a centrifuge so we can reprocess them. We're going to get a pretty good amount of the dark green stuff and then a very small amount of the plutonium, the orange, out of this guy. This is a very slow process. It takes 50 seconds. We might end up speeding it up if we need to. I'm just sort of like eyeballing stuff. I haven't done any complex math. We're just going to figure it out and it'll work. It's going to work. Don't worry about it. So after that is done, we've already got one of those on the belt right there. Kerblam, our first plutonium. It looks like a Cheeto or something. Anyway, we want to make a plutonium fuel cell. That takes 1 plutonium. We get 10 fuel cells. They have half the energy value of a uranium fuel cell. But that's okay because we can get a ton of them just by reprocessing our used up plutonium fuel cells later on. But we're going to start here. So we're going to make that. And it's kind of a similar thing. I wonder, can we lay this out so he can take advantage of this guy? If you were there, you could reach that, but then you wouldn't reach that. You wouldn't reach this guy. I guess I can just, okay, I have a better idea. This is going to be better. We're going to reroute that down here. Did I just run out of belts? I ran out of belts. Okay, I guess I'll have to request some. Or go, not request some, but go get some. All right, then we'll do this and that. And then you need that. And I will probably slow insert is fine. Now we'll go fast inserter. Fast inserter all the way. There we go. Bam! There is our first dude getting outputted. And we're going to do a similar kind of thing. We are going to say pick up position like that. And I don't know. We'll just limit it. Whatever. Okay, good. So this guy is processing. Looks like only one of them is actively working at the moment. Okay, good. Now we've got these guys. What we probably want to do is we want to request them over here. And I'm wondering how sophisticated we want to make this, because we definitely want to have used up uranium fuel cells or plutonium fuel cells so that we can reprocess them. But anyway, let's just request them over here just to get them over here. Hey, robots! Do I not have any yet? I should have some. Here they come. Okay, yeah, they had to come, I guess, from a decent distance, but there we go. We've got both fuel cells in there. And the next step we can't really do until these have been actually used. Looks like our research is almost done. We need the used up fuel cells. And then we can do plutonium. At that point, we can do plutonium fuel reprocessing to get even more plutonium and even bright green, which will let us make a lot more fuel cells easier. All right, I think that's about gonna do it for this episode. We are spending up our first little bit of plutonium fuel cells. When that gets used up, we'll have the leftover end up here. And speaking of which, I should add it to the filter inserter so it ends up in the chest. We don't want the fuel cells ending up there. We want them to just kind of like stay on the belt, but not cycle around. Okay, so when that finally happens, when we finally get some empty spent fuel cells, it will end up over here. It'll get reprocessed into a lot more plutonium and a little bit more of the bright green. So those get filter inserted into 2 different belts. And the plutonium ends up down here to turn into plutonium fuel cells, and the bright green ends up going over here, and that gets turned into uranium fuel cells. And over time, we will be using more and more of the plutonium, but we should have more power than... I mean, look at this. It's just all totally backed up, barely even being used. Because we have power for days, and I have started the space assembly research, which gets us, we will learn how to make an assembly robot. And then the next one is space construction, where we learn how to make the dry dock assembly component, which takes all that stuff, which is a little bit expensive. And then the dry dock structural component, which is not that big a deal, I guess. And those guys we've got to launch into space. So each one of those, this is 12 different rockets we've got to launch. We've got to make those things that many times. And that's just to get to the next step. So yeah, we're making progress. But that's the end of this episode. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.